This is an honor, you know. It's really kind of, to me, meaningful that I'm a resident of Cape Cod. I've been here for, I guess, 6 years now, full time. And it's exciting to have a chance to share from my heart the best of what I can give to you. And so it's a gear all or a different group than I'm used to. I'm used to either, as Gail was saying, you know, collegiate teams or collegiate coaches, or I work with musicians as well, you know. So I would like you all to ask any questions you have. So just my basic profile, I'm a sports psychologist. I help people perform better. You know, and my expertise is when people are under pressure. You know, and I think that how things have gone in the last, I don't know, last decade or 2 or 3 is the pressure is going up and up, and we're not giving people skills how to deal with that. And so I'm very interested in my Living the Sweet Spot book. I'm very interested in not just having people perform better, but also to help them have a better quality of life. Because for me, I remember once I had a young athlete who was 12 years old, and her parents flew her in from another country to see me for a weekend, and had a lot of many hours of work with this athlete. And it was very clear that at 12 years old, she went to a school where she was full-time doing her sport, you know, just a little bit doing school, just enough. And it was really clear she did not like her sport. She was it's been so many years that she was a gymnast, you know. And it was a miserable, like, again, it's like, what is it that you enjoy about it? Anything you appreciate about it? Anything that you value about it? It was just pretty much, you know. And I thought, wow, like, this is a problem. I can't stay in an industry where I help people. I'm really good at helping people run faster, jump higher, make their teams. You know, I'm good at helping people performance. But for me, I felt like, what am I doing? I'm helping these young people like torture themselves to hit these levels of performance, but for what? You know, and so for me it became, I thought to myself, this is maybe now, gosh, maybe 8 years ago, I either have to help change my kind of profession, or I have to get out. Because I can't feel good at night going to sleep, just helping people perform better, and know that they might be internally, you know, miserable. You know, so for me, the quality of the internal experience mattered so much. And what I found was, over a number of years, and it's probably been 10 years, 12 years since I had this insight, I started realizing, I started seeing, well, at first I felt guilty that I was cared about that. I felt like this is not what they're paying me to do, this is not what they're paying me to write about, or talk about, or teach about. But I found that people started having kind of big jumps in performance. And I thought, okay, I'm onto something. So it's not like I just have this, not just like improving performance, it's not just me helping them improve the quality of their experience. That's all it was about, was actually helping with performance too. To me, it's pretty exciting. So you think like, wow, so if you improve the quality of the internal experience, and you also looking for achievement, to me that's the sweet spot. And that's why I entitled this book The Sweet Spot. This place of how can I help people improve, and maybe more rapidly than usual, you know? Because you can only do so much when you push. And I know from my own experience, you know, I was an Olympic athlete, and Brown and I did meet during the rowing years, and she was perhaps more wise than I was, because she was like, I'm done. You know, and I just kept pushing. And, you know, you can wear out your mind, body, and soul, you know, in exchange for what? You know, for some, it's nice to say I was an Olympian, it feels, I like to hear that, but I think like the story behind it, I don't know, last few years, when I go back and do it again, I'm not so sure. Because of how, you know, how much I had lost my love, my joy of what I did. And so now I can bring that back to people, and I can help them capture that, hold on to that. Every time their performance just jumps. And so what I would like to do with you all during that time we have is to share with you a few of the, I think, you know, like the gems in the book. Some of the core ideas that are really helpful with helping people improve performance, and I also just improving the quality of life, you know. So here we go. And it's integration, really, of this, I think the best of positive psychology and the best of sports psychology brought together. That's how I think about my work. And so this quote comes out of my text, the sweet spot, what is hitting the sweet spot? It probably can't happen unless you're fully present, doing all that you can do in the moment to play or perform your best. It sounds, oh yeah, you got that, just gotta invest your energy right here, right now. But the problem is, of course, there's a lot of distractions. Distractions of fear, anxiety, self-criticism, you know, focusing only on what's wrong with, instead of focusing on what's working and what's going right. You know. And so this is the focus of what I'm up to. And so when I'm trying to help you with performance, it's about, okay, it's like, let's get you to attend to what's important to attend to. So we have a baseball player, right? So it's like, yeah, what's your name again?
Franklin.
Franklin. So Franklin's a baseball player. And thinking about, you know, knowing that there's things you need to pay attention to perform well, you know? And also that there are distractions, and there's emotional distractions. Oh, I can't do it, I'm not as big as, not strong as, not skilled as, I don't have as many opportunities as, you know, and trying to learn how to, and fast forward to mindfulness, we're not there yet, but learn how to accept those thoughts and feelings. They're normal. Frankly, everyone has them. You don't think they do? They do. Everyone's got those kind of thoughts and feelings, and learning how to, instead of believing them, caving into them, becoming overwhelmed by them, which most of my clients do, and that's why they come see me one-on-one. So I'm trying to share with you all what I share the best with my clients. And, you know, learning how to be able to tolerate those kind of feelings and thoughts. And know that they're normal. Everyone around them feels this way, but athletes, they don't see that. They see everyone as like powerful and strong and together, and they go, you know, that's not reality. You know? And so helping with poise, and then helping athletes learn how to, you know, be able to be present to what's happening so they can adapt and adjust and make adjustments instead of being lost in regret of some mistake they made or lost in some kind of like anxiety, fear of what might or might not happen in the future. And it's not just the athletes, it's all of us in this room for different parts of our life, all parts of our life, whether it's work life, friendship life, whatever it is. We all get distracted by our emotions and thoughts. And we all become mindless with that. We become like caught up in it so much that we lose opportunity right here, right now about how to make wise choices. To offer ourselves, you know, the best performance possible and quality of internal life possible. You know, it can't always be fun and nice, you know, but we can be wise with how we move forward. So here are some. I actually have worked with a lot of fencers the last few years. I don't know why. You know, a lot of fencers. So, but thinking about, so here are some strategies from the sweet spot I'd like to share with you all. One thing I've noticed that happens a lot with people who push themselves, trying to achieve. You know, and it's like mainstream American culture. That's all of us. We all push ourselves in all different ways, you know. What can happen is we get caught up in what I call the 2% blinders. We get caught up in only what's wrong instead of what's good and what's right, just as it is. And with athletes, I think about this idea of 98+2 rule. Like, yes, you have to be able to focus on what's wrong to get better. We must, right? But at the same time, we can really lose track of what you're already doing well. What's already good and right about you, just as you are. So I call it the 98+2 rule. And so when I think about this one, yes, we have to keep in mind how to improve. And if I asked if we had time, we could talk, we had an hour or two, we could talk about what are the things you all are trying to improve in your lives. Everybody in this room has something that they're trying to work on to improve. You know? And what can happen is we get so caught up in that, we forget about what's good and right about us. So, I'd like you all to think about some of your strengths, just as you are. Not about, and not strengths in terms of like what you can produce, but kind of who you are in the process. So for the athletes, I'm determined, I'm emotionally steady, I'm a good teammate. You know, so something you respect about yourself. It's not about outcome and winning, just like who you are in terms of your effort to make something happen. You're persistent, you're kind, you're loving, you're hearted, you're determined, you're persistent. I already said that. You know. So this is going to be a little bit of like talk to each other. So I just want to invite you to. My students, I don't have that much coming through all, but my students, they'll get this look in their face like, oh boy, here she goes. She's making us talk about herself. But I really deeply believe if you don't do self-reflection for yourself on these ideas, you come in, oh, that was interesting, you leave, it doesn't really do anything for you. You know? And so what I really hope is, I'm going to offer you about half a dozen brief exercises, and I'm hoping that everybody will walk out with an idea that might contribute to your well-being. To you having maybe a little bit better quality of internal experience, you know? Or maybe more clear about how you can work towards something in a way that's more compelling to you, and not such a grind, you know? Because that's what I see with these athletes. And it's getting harder. It's getting harder. Pressure expectations are rising. They're rising. We're just talking, you know, my son, he's playing basketball in July. He's at what? He's got 2 games tonight. 2 games in July, like what is that? Like, you know, but there's no training for these kids to deal with like, well, how do you deal with like if you don't make the baskets, you don't do a good job, or if you're not selected with this team or that team, how do you handle that? There's nothing. And so what I want to do is offer, what I say is like, if you can't see a sports psychologist, my book or some other book similar to this, get access to core ideas that help you, you know, learn how to handle the pressure, expectations, the judgments, you know, that we've all taken into ourselves. So a couple of your strengths. Maybe turn to someone next to you, and if you just come up with one, I'm not going to insist you all come up with 3 or 5, but something about yourself that you respect. And I, you know, for myself, I know I'm someone who I try hard, you know, it doesn't mean it always comes out good. Sometimes it comes flat, you know, but I would definitely, like, try as hard as I can. And so, and that's something I know I can rely on, like, no matter what. Outcome good, outcome bad, at least. So if you turn to someone next to you, do like 90 seconds. Ready to go?
Sure. Throw it out. I think I'm trying to write her, but organized. Carrie Joy.
Have your lunch of the day.
Always work hard.
How about
Everyone else. What? Caring that, I don't know. Caring for their work. Trying to and I was with this. And everything's the same about this shit.
And I was trying to think of something. I said to you, we know, we have our eye on the prize. We know it's like we have priorities.
All right.
That's what
You don't have a chance to get to it? Yeah? You don't get to it? Yes?
for some reason.
No? You have time? It's interesting, you know, this.
I know what to do with time.
The steps.
Sorry, in a smaller conversation, that's one thing that's interesting. It can feel like, you know, bragging, you know, like not being humble, like to say what your strengths are. And I think it's important, though, that internally we know what they are. We don't have to say them out loud, but we have to know what we can rely upon when things get hard. You know, really helpful for that. Any comments on that? What that was like for you? Yes.
Two parts. One, do the strengths change from time to
Yes, they do. Yeah.
time? And
Yeah.
can the strengths become more powerful if we record them or journal?
Okay, great question.
I'm
So-
wondering.
So can strengths can they get stronger? And research in positive psych says yes. They're like character strengths. And there's a whole, if we had time, we'd go for 3 hours, you know. There's something called the virtues in action, and they've done a lot of research worldwide on identifying people's strengths, you know. And the idea is that any strengths that I'm talking about, not like I'm a winner, but like I'm courageous, I'm able to love and be loved, I have self-control, I have wisdom, those kind of things. Those can be cultivated over time, but you have to exercise them. So it's not enough to say I just want to be courageous. It would be like, well, I want to be courageous, and this relates to sport for sure. I want to be courageous. Then when I feel the fear, I have to be willing to tolerate it and still do what I need to do in this moment, like take the move, take the hit, take the shot, you know? So if you exercise the strength, it can get stronger.
But then, therefore, may we conclude that as the strengths increase in intensity, that the weaknesses diminish in possibility?
It depends, you know, depends on what you're talking. I don't think so. It depends on how they're connected. So say there's some strengths overlap with one another, so there could be some relationship there. But it could be like if one strength is the ability to love and be loved, and another strength is to be courageous. You know, you can be courageous and not necessarily cultivating this, like,
But what about the weakness? Do the weaknesses get diminished? That was.
That's what I meant.
oh, so if you get stronger in courage, does your love, ability to love, be loved get worse?
No, your fear, like would your fear get less? Your corresponding.
Oh, that's
It's interconnected.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't have any answers from research, but my anecdotal from 20 years is yes. Because, and that's probably a lot of my work with the mindfulness work, is because if you can learn how to tolerate the discomfort and still do something anyway, you're not caving into that anxiety or fear. You're not strengthening that. You're strengthening the kind of courageous response, and so you're not as likely to get caught up with the fear and anxiety. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
That's a great question. Anyone else? Jessica?
Too small.
It's too long? It's not too long?
Well, it's just kind of the thing we were saying about, I've forgotten what I was going to say, about when you are acknowledging your strengths and everything and bragging.
Yes.
I don't know if many other kids are in this room, but in a lot of schools they have this thing of like growth mindset,
Yes.
which is like believing that you can, I guess, like get better at things,
Yeah.
and that you're not born one way and that's how you are forever.
Yes.
But, so a lot of the teachers in my school these times have to like change your words, change your mindset, and it's like one thing that you can say it's a fixed mindset, and then what you say instead can make it a growth mindset. And most of them, like, I agree with, like, they're good, they're like, they make sense. Then one of them is, the fixed mindset words is, I'm awesome at this, and the growth mindset words are like, I'm on the right track, which
Yeah.
is like, that's basically saying you can't acknowledge your strengths, like, as long as you're not going around thinking you're awesome at everything, it's okay to acknowledge.
Yeah. So, we could go into this one for a while. So my maybe brief answer to that is there's a difference between saying like, I'm an excellent violin player versus I put great effort into, and I'm making a lot of improvements as a violin player.
Yeah.
So that I'm awesome, I don't know if everybody could hear that, but she was saying at school,
Yeah, they've got Carol Dweck's research on mindset. So this idea of either you say I'm good, I'm excellent, and so if you think you're excellent and you make a mistake, then all of a sudden you are a loser. You know, so it can be really problematic. As opposed to I'm trying hard, I'm learning, I'm persistent. You know, that is the kind of mindset that people tend to maybe don't get closed down as easily from. There's big questions in the room. Okay, here we go. So this is a core strategy in the positive psychology movement, and I have been shocked and inspired by how much the graduate students I teach get impacted by this idea of just noticing what is good and right just as it is. It's also an idea that, well, I'll talk about it in a moment, but this is an idea that Brad Stevens, who's the head coach of the Celtics, also found wildly important to bring to his team. So it's really interesting how this core idea of positive psych resonates with people on many levels. So here's an example of, in my text, I interviewed someone who had been a world champion 5 or 6 times, I can't remember how many times now, she was a world champion. And I asked her about how she thinks about training, and this is what she said. You have to make the day-to-day enjoyable. Even when she's out in the middle of the river alone, have a hard training to do. I remember her saying, it was like, you know, if I had like 4 20-minute pieces of anaerobic threshold. That's like going 4 times 20 minutes with your heart rate beating at about 175 beats a minute. It's painful, you know? Most rowers with that kind of training, they don't like that. But this athlete's like, okay, you've got to make it enjoyable. And then she said she would think to herself before she began such a piece like that, this is awesome. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm in the middle of the basin on the Charles River. This is incredible to be here right now. That's how she thought. That's how she trained. And then after I interviewed her, she goes, Baltzell, doesn't everyone think like this? I said, no, they don't, you know? But the idea of like being able to really notice what's good and right, and it's not to say bad things don't happen. It's not to say things aren't difficult. Because, you know, there is difficulty for sure. But can we bring awareness to what's good and right in the midst of our lives, you know, just as they are. And so I was thinking, this is one of my good things today. Galen sent this to me today. I think this is like the cutest, like I can tell you, this is like the cutest sign I've ever seen. I actually something happened, it was hard, and I was like, this is a good thing that happened to me. So, I'd like you all to think about this, like what are 3 good things that happened today to you? Just as they are. And I bring this to athletes, I'll say, what are 3 good things that happen in practice? What are 3 good things that happen in a game? Because they don't think like that. They think like, coach pulled me out, I made a mistake, it's so embarrassing, you know, I'm overwhelmed, I got a bad grade. No, we go to what's wrong. We go to what went wrong. And it's a habit we have, you know, and so this is an opportunity to think about, okay, and that's where those 2% blinders can come in. He's focused on what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong, what's wrong. And what can happen with that is people start to shut down, they lose confidence, they get overwhelmed, they're not as resilient to difficulty because they're, you know, only looking at what's wrong. So, 3 good things that happened today. So let's do a couple out loud, because this is a thing that my students do this, they think like, well, nothing good happened today. You know, unless it's something like, you know, my mother bought me a car today, or, you know, those kind of things are good things. I won this big event. But the good things, noticing like the little tiny things that are good in your day can be incredibly helpful. To bring awareness to what's good and what's right. Because this helps with performance. You notice what's working, what's right. It helps you figure out what is the target, like what am I going for here? So, anyone have something good that happened to them today? A little tiny thing that they can appreciate you.
Just at work, I had people thank me for helping them print something out, and it feels good to know that they had a critical thing they needed to do, and they thought they wouldn't be able to do it so easily, and then suddenly they could.
Wonderful.
I went to a rose course today as a field trip.
Oh, nice.
And at the Heritage Museum.
And then what?
At the Heritage Museum.
Okay, the Heritage Museum. Wonderful. It's a good thing. Thank you. Anyone else today? Yes.
I didn't have use of my car all day, so I sort of was in Orleans, and I had to do everything on foot, and it was cool. I love to walk, but I think I'm incorporating this one
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so you had this chance to actually make good out of maybe a little difficult situation. Yeah. And so, it's funny, I'm driving today thinking about this, and it's like, just remind yourself of these good things can be really soothing. So I'm going to offer you all to try this yourselves. Like, what are 3 good things that happened today? And it could be little tiny things. It could be you appreciated the way that cup of tea tasted. Sometimes that's all we got. But sometimes if you can appreciate that, it can change the tone of your day. Noticing what's good and right, just as it is. So I'm invite you to turn to someone next to you. 3 things. Good luck.
Oh, it's bright and early, like, let's get that. Yeah. Woo, it's good. It's on my bike. I think that's the get out some heroes. And that's like, I'm like sitting there, like, it's so nice to like help somebody, you know, like a customer or anything like that. No, bring a little then like I'm working on the streets, and then I was like, Mom! It's like, since she's 8 years old, and like that.
If you ever have a problem, we can help it.
All right.
Yeah.
So how was that for you? How'd that feel? It feels silly. Yeah, okay. It feels good, it feels silly. Yeah, it feels good, it feels silly. Anything else? It's like elevation. You know, I feel like, at least for myself, I feel a little elevated. Just bringing attention to what's good and what's right. And imagine doing this in the performance realm for the athletes at work, with family when it's frustrating, you know? It's just as it is. What is good and what's right, just as it is. And the research in this suggests that if you keep a journal, and not every day, but if you mark it down a few times a week, it can be really helpful to bring an awareness to goodness. And it can help change the feeling tone of the internal quality of your experience. I've worked with many athletes who they feel like they're like prisoners almost. They act like they're almost like prisoners. And this one athlete I had in class, and it's like, she was like, yeah, it's really, I'm like, it's really hard, it's overwhelming. I'm like, but wait a minute, like, you have a full scholarship. And someone makes all your food, and they buy it, and they clean it up too. And they do your laundry, and they make your travel plans, It's incredible, and yet it can feel like, even in that kind of situation, we can look at it and go, oh, that's just ridiculous. But probably if people looked at each of our lives, they would think that us not being incredibly grateful would be kind of maybe ridiculous too. And so bringing awareness, because when I did this with this athlete, this was many years ago, when she brought her awareness, like, oh, actually, you bring in like, there's some good here, and I can appreciate it. So maybe I can take that kind of spirit and bring it into my training, and not just feel like I'm kind of like forcing through and trying to get through and getting it off, can help us.
Yes, somebody cooked for me today.
Yes, and it was interesting, I shared this, I gave a talk with Brad Stevens and his coaching staff and all his good friends. It was like 70 men and myself in this room, and this is exercise he became really interested in. He's like, hey, write that down, at end of our practice. I'm like, but make sure that you don't make people say it, just give them the opportunity to share if they want to. Because like that perfunctory, you must say what's good thing, He's like, yeah, write that down. I was like, okay, thanks. Okay. So this is an idea the basic idea in sports psychology, what can be really helpful is creating the intentions of what you want to create. Using imagery to help create what you want to create. And this picture is Carrie Dunay Lorenz. She was the first female Navy fighter pilot, fighter pilot. And the story goes with her is that she is a little taller than I am, and she's really long from her hip to her knee. And if she gets ejected out of one of the planes, she breaks both legs. And so she used to be a fighter pilot, and she used to have to go land on these aircraft carriers out in the ocean. And she said it was fine, except when the ocean got really rocky, and it got really foggy, and it was raining, and she would notice like there's only so much gasoline left in her tank, and she would know like I only have maybe 2 more attempts to catch. And if I don't catch, then what I have to do is I have to go abandon the plane and eject myself. And if I do that, I have to break over. She kind of cheated on the test to make sure she get down on that team on that. In that group. And so I said, well, how did you do it? How did you feel that feeling? And she said, well, what I would do is when I was up getting ready to land, I would imagine exactly what I was going to do to land the plane. I'd feel how it felt, and I'd feel the catch, I'd feel the joy. And if I would not attempt to land until I was able to go through that in my mind and feel it, feel the emotion emerge with how I wanted to feel with the success. And so this is this idea of seeing it before it happens, creating positive intentions. How do you want it to go? I remember I went and spoke with 60 or 70 swimmers. And I asked them, you had it was like a big event coming up. Who in here is imagining how you want to swim? Who in here is imagining themselves in the pool, swimming the way you want to swim and racing the way you want to race? Out of 60 kids, 60 or 65 kids. I don't remember how many there were there, it was in that range, but I do remember how many people raised their hands. Any idea? Out of 60, 65 kids? High school kids? Yeah. What do you think?
15.
15, that's a really good guess. That's a good guess.
0.
0, and we have, what do you think? 1 application. And then he's like, just kidding. The fact was really 0. So it just really struck me thinking about how these athletes are training 20, 25, 28, 30 hours a week, right? So they go to double sessions, they're getting their parents ready early in the morning, they're there at 5:30 in the morning, they're training, lifting, running, swimming, all the things they have to do. And none of them are imagining how they want to swim. after the session, many of them reported they were imagining what would go wrong, what would happen if I don't make my time, what happens if I'm not put in the, in the races I want to be in, what if, what if, what if. Their minds were filled with how they don't want to. Albert Bandura is one of the greatest psychologists living, in his 80s now. And one of the ideas, he came up with this idea of self-efficacy. Unfortunately, the term is so academic sounding that who says self-efficacy? But his research is phenomenal. And his idea is, it's like, how do you build confidence? How do you build belief in your ability to achieve something? And one of the things he talks about is, again, his language, imaginal experiences. But he talks about how you have to fill your mind with future possible successes. And fill your mind with past successes. It's in his book called Self-Efficacy, Something of Control, 1986. It's like 650 pages, it's very dense. The chapter in athletics took me like 15 reads, and 80 hours later, barely could get it. But he's brilliant, and this idea of filling your mind with future successes, if we only did that. If you only imagine, how do you want to feel when X happens? How do you want to be? How do you want to feel? How do you want to be focused? How do you want to be performing? How do you want it to go? So it's just something that when I talk about imagery with people, you don't have to have like the perfect image, perfect feeling in your body, perfect smell, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just means if you shut your eyes and imagine something you'd like to have happen, and imagining it going the way that you'd like it to go. It's a social interaction, maybe it's socially it's uncomfortable, or if it's like at practice, like how you want to respond when a coach criticizes you, how you want to respond if you make a mistake, how you're going to rebound, how you're going to shut down and give up, or you're going to keep fighting, what's it going to be like. But allowing your mind to think and prepare how you want it to go. So this is something that's kind of paired with that, this idea of having a prepared, I think a lot of people around these kind of critical performance moments that haven't happened yet. I'd probably say that 95% of my work with athletes or coaches is helping them prepare for these moments that are predictably challenging. Maybe the moment when, like there was one runner I worked with last year who was she was an athlete who had gone through high school and won all the races. She'd been a national champion many times through college. Always won, She was so good. She'd get the starting line, she knew she's going to win. And then all of a sudden, she turns pro and she's not winning all the races. And it's like, having to deal with, whoa, that was really overwhelming for her. And so I spent a lot of time with her helping her think about how does she want to be responding in that moment when she's in the race. I think she was a 400 meter runner. Maybe it's not, I can't remember the distance, but she was in a race, and it was the last lap around the track. She was in 400, it must have been a mile. It was the last lap around the rack, last trip around the, and she had to make her move, And she used to always just kick and go and win. And all of a sudden she wasn't kicking and going and winning anymore. And so she had to so one of the things we did with her is help her think about a word or a phrase she could bring to mind in that critical moment that she already had it planned, And the thing that this one athlete came up with was, she did not want to make a move and go in first because she felt that was too kind of overwhelming for her. Just get in second, get in second. And she's like, if I can just get in second, hang on the shoulder of the other athlete, I can pass him at the end, And just go to second place. And that's a phrase that helped her tremendously to make that move in that critical moment. So having a phrase or a thought, this is what I'm going to do. Let's see. Yeah, this is what I'm going to do. So when I was preparing for this talk, I was asked to do this talk a few months ago. There's an athlete at Nassau High School who told me about how she used the book The Sweet Spot to help her with performance. But the interesting thing was, she said it helped her a lot with track, but she started with it helping her on the lobster boat. So I said, can I interview you and see, you can tell us, your experience and how you use the book. And she said, sure. So I'm going to show you a short clip, like a 4-minute clip of her. Right? And then what I thought I'd do is, we'll do that. And then we'll see what questions you have, and then if we have time, we'll talk a little bit more about mindfulness. So here we go. And so I also created my daughter did this, my 11-year-old. Any questions, write an index card. So if anyone has a question, so I'm a sports psychologist for 20 years. I'm the president of the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. You know, it's like this has been what I've done for 20 years. And if anyone has a specific question they'd like to ask me, but you don't have to ask, you know, in front of everybody and like they'll know who said what. I'm going to show this 4-minute video, and while it's happening, you're welcome to take an index card, put your question in my hat. If you want, you just come up if you want to do that, and so you can be thinking.
Do you want me to get a few pens?
Sure. Yeah. Or thank you. Or you can just ask your question. So you know, this doesn't seem to be such a shy crowd. You know. So here we go. Where are you from?
Yeah,
And kind of a little about your family.
I've grown up in Provincetown for pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, there was that brief time when we were on the farm in New Hampshire. Family really nearby, like my aunt and her husband live next door, and my grandmother lives up the hill, or she did live up the hill with my grandfather too. Well, art is a big part of our family, and so is nature.
The Malakote family, when did it begin? How many generations back?
Oh, geez. It might be 4, but it could be 5. And yeah, it's pretty much just like a long line of artists.
The summer you started fishing, how did you feel inside? How were you thinking and feeling?
Yeah, so I'm used to being really like better at most people than things. I know that I don't know if I said that right. And it sounds kind of bad, but I'm used to like just, I don't know, being the best, and I like to be better than other people.
Through great effort.
Yeah, exactly. And I still didn't, even though I went out on the boat that one time, I didn't really know anything about lobstering. And Peter's been fishing since he was like a young boy, and his brother had been fishing since he was little too. And so I got on the boat, and I didn't want to be bad at it, and I didn't want to be the slowest, and I didn't want to mess up at all. And so when that would happen, it was just like sort of an internal, it was like really frustrating, and I was constantly comparing myself to how fast they were going, or whether or not they were making mistakes, and just sort of like beating myself down about it, I guess, just because I wanted to be the fastest on the boat. So yeah, that did make it hard in the beginning.
Time when you were like the worst moment, when you think we kind of hit you the hardest, feeling badly about yourself. Is there a moment on the boat?
There was multiple moments, but
Choose
one time
one
when I felt really bad is when I think it was the second time when I had measured a lobster too small and then put it in the bin to be sold. And measuring a lobster, putting a lobster that's too small into the bin is really, really serious, because that's just a really important rule they have in place to protect the lobsters. And so you catch all the lobsters, you put them in, you measure them, put them in crates, band them, and then you bring them to the co-op, and then the guys at the co-op bring them to be sold elsewhere. And sometimes they notice if a lobster is too small, and you can have, if you do a serious violation, then you can have your license taken away. The captain of the boat can. So, like I said, it's kind of a serious thing.
To living in the sweet spot, tell me like when you picked it up, why you picked it up.
Yeah,
and how it might help you.
I don't remember exactly at what point in the summer I did, but I knew generally like what the book was about, kind of. And I also knew that I was having a hard time. So I was like, I have this book with me. I brought it to Maine, which is like, wow, that's kind of funny that I brought it to Maine. I didn't even know I was going to be needing it. So I started to read it, and one thing that I really liked was how there was the exercises right in the book that you could just kind of do right away and then in the moment. And once I started doing that, I was able to practice shifting my focus while I was on the boat from like comparing myself to Peter and Nate and like worrying about what I was doing to focusing on what I was doing in that exact moment. You know, opening the trap or like taking the lobster out. Just, it's really like, it's not just one thing. It was pretty much just exactly what I was doing in the moment. And then if I found my mind drifting to like comparing myself or being down on myself, it was having those more affirming things that I could say to myself. As the summer went on, it was really great because I found myself not even thinking about like how they were doing, but I was just having fun and I was in the moment and I was getting faster, and like, so that was just really great. Like by the end of the summer, I was just having so much fun whenever I was doing, and like you get in the zone and you're going fast and you're picking the lobsters. So
take home messages to people listening to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess what I learned was just that power of just focusing on what you're doing in the moment and not, like I've said like a million times, like comparing yourself, like not everyone's are the same. So just sort of figuring out what yours are and knowing what you do well is just so helpful to being able to go hard at whatever you're doing.
So, any questions or comments on that piece? Yes?
I actually related an awful lot to her. One of the things that you were talking earlier is that I found that growing up, that was the emphasis was always on doing everything right, especially in the academic sense. And that even though as being an adult now, there's lots of things that I want to try, especially physical things, that I tend to think the worst case scenario up front because my image is you're a klutz, you're not going to do it right. And so I end up not doing things that I really want to do. So how she described it was so spot on. It was really related to it.
Beautiful, thank you.
Very wise for her age.
Yes, she is.
I thought that was interesting, her distraction was comparing, the measuring herself against other people.
Yeah. That's a common challenge in any kind of performance realm, whether it's lobster go, track, field, whatever it is. Yeah. So what I thought we'd do, we had some time left, which we do, is to think about this. And this is something I've been thinking deeply about for many years now. How do you help somebody when they have like these intense negative thoughts and emotions? How do you help them with that? And all the sweet spot, I think, is helpful. You know, Libby's talking about how she was able to stop being so critical of herself and get herself back in the moment and engage. That is great. That's actually great. And it can be very helpful. I think there's also times when you can't think your way out of it. And then what do? You know? And so I'm thinking a lot about, let's get this right now. I've seen this a lot with performers. They give up. And they don't necessarily give up like visually, their bodies are still in motion. I did a study of I had 38 athletes. They were on the U.S. Olympic team or at the training center to make the Olympic team. And over half of them admitted that either at a world championship or an Olympic game, they basically gave up in the middle of a race when it wasn't going their way. When they knew they couldn't win or they knew they couldn't medal, they just, their minds were gone. They were just ready to just kind of go through the motion, get out of the boat, Performance anxiety is something that I see, a lot of fear, a lot of dread, feeling overwhelmed. That's probably the number one thing I see in my private practice. And trying to help athletes with that. And then the harsh self-criticism. And so what I've come to is this idea of, and I can't, this idea of mindfulness. I teach a class in mindfulness, 40 hours. I just turned in a book in 2 days on mindfulness and performance. I just wrote a book last year on mindfulness. It's like, we could talk a lot about this. But basically this idea of being able to be present, truly present to what's occurring. Being able to, instead of having being all caught up in what's going on, be able to kind of have some space and see what's, here's anxiety, here's fear, here's self-criticism, there it is again, Being able to kind of hold it, be present to it. It can be also, here's joy, here's interest, here's curiosity, here's love, here's passion. It doesn't always have to go through negative, of course. This idea of being able to be present and accepting of whatever's showing up. And when we think about accepting, it doesn't mean that you think it's okay. It just means it's reality. My car tires blew. Okay, there's anger, there's frustration. It's still, what am I going to do? I have to accept it. It is what it is. And then how can I wisely move forward? Just like what you're saying, this idea of, what's your name?
Kathleen.
Kathleen. Such a beautiful example. This thing of these thoughts of I didn't want to repeat them, but kind of I can't, I'm not able to, I feel overwhelmed, There it is. It's okay. Here it is. My old friend, fear. My old friend trying to keep me safe. There it is. Okay. And being mindful and being it's okay, it's here. There it is. And with that, able to hold it that way, now we can make a wise choice. How do I want to handle it now? Do you still want to go try the Zumba class? Do you still want to go try the yoga class? Do you still want to go try the whatever, Even those thoughts and feelings are showing up. The typical sports psychology in the last 30 years would say, we have to think it away. We have to think it's okay, I'm strong, okay. That works sometimes, but not with intense anxiety, it doesn't work. The answer to that is being able to accept it. You don't prefer to feel this way. No one wants to have these thoughts. No one wants to have these feelings. Here they are. Here we are.
What you just said about my old friend protecting myself.
Yep.
So the fear or the anxiety is something that inside yourself, somewhere you feel like you need that to protect yourself.
Well, if you think of any of these negative feelings, they're there to help us in some way. If you spend all the time thinking about it, they're there to help us in some way, to keep us safe, to keep us motivated, to keep us on track. There's reasons why they're there. But the idea is that if we can be mindful and present and tolerate those distractions, really, and not let them get the best of us. Like, there's a pull toward anxiety, and there's a pull toward regret. And usually it's like this, but I can go, it's okay, you can just hang out right here. I got you. But now I have some space to decide how I want to handle what's coming up right here in front of me. Hanson Mendes wrote a great book called The Buddha's Brain, if you're interested. With this idea of being mindful, you can learn how to, when you're mindful and present, and not getting caught up in past and future. You actually can attend to what you're doing. For athletics, it's in performance, it's critical. So this image is helpful to me. So oftentimes when we have these feelings like fear, we just shut down. Or, comparison, they're better than I am, I don't try. There's like a reaction. And so mindfulness helps us create the space of, instead of just reacting, we can hold it. Here it is. Here's fear. Here's regret. Okay, this feels awful. This feels awful. Oh. But I still have a chance to make a decision here how I'm going to respond. I don't have to do it the way I've always done it. So this idea of, here's fear of like looking silly or ridiculous, And here's like those memories of how it was when I did try that one time. Oh, but I go, wait a minute, no, this feels awful, but it also feels beautiful because I have a choice. I can do it differently. I don't just react. I can respond. I can choose how I want it to be. So athletes in the room. How many athletes? Yeah, we go. Athletes in the room. That when those feelings hit you like anxiety, fear, and self-criticism, and embarrassment, and then you have a typical way of responding. Mad, throw, smash, fight, give up, shut down, embarrassed, humiliated, red face, go. These are these normal reactions. Very normal reactions. And there's reasons why we have them. The thing is, there's a choice to do it differently if you choose to. And I remember when I first heard about mindfulness, it wasn't about performance, it was with my children, maybe 10 years ago. And that kind of feeling of like, they should be in the car, lined up, doing what I say they should do, And I got this like feeling like going through me, and I'm thinking all this mindful stuff I'm studying, and I got to just feel these feelings and see what happens. And my daughter at the time, who, at the time she was little, now she's 15, she goes, Mom, and I just stood there, and she looks up, she goes, Mom, if you start acting like this more, do just what you want. Let's go. I get in the car, sit down. It was like, whoa, So they were used to me going, come on, I'm just like, so this idea of this space, and I think of it like this. Y'all remember the show Bewitched?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. My students don't remember Bewitched. I remember this. I think so people who haven't seen the show, she was a witch, and she was married to a mortal. And the mortal husband was kind of like, made a lot of silly decisions, got them into lots of messes. And it would be a real mess. It was a really disaster. She'd go, tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. And everyone else froze. But she and Darren could talk, like, what are we going to do here? How are we going to think that? How are we going to figure this out? Oh, that's a really good plan. We'll do it like that. Ready? Okay, ready to get back to your space. Tinkle, 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 back to real life, And this, I don't have time to talk about meditation, but being more mindful certainly helps to meditate. Something that's been important in my life the last 8 or 10 years. That we practice being present as occurring, we practice not reacting automatically. We kind of be in that space of choice. In that space of choice, that moment comes like, am I going to sign up for that thing? No, you can't, you're just going to actually you're going to fall down fast. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Now, I really feel really awful. Now, am I going to sign up for this? Yeah, I'm going to sign up for this. We can make a different choice. And I guess this is maybe the most important I think I've been working on the last few years, is I think when people are, and I'll maybe end with this thought, when people are asked in mindfulness just to be present to that anxiety, you're just stay with it. Just so you can make wise choices. I once had a high jumper who I worked with, who she was stuck at the same height for like 3 years, 4 years. And she would like go to run, take the jump, step, 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 and then she'd just like not go. Okay. So when she jumped, she'd usually do pretty well, but sometimes she wouldn't jump. And I got her as a client. And I said, look, we just gotta get you to be present. You gotta like, because you're like all caught up in like, what if I don't make it? What if I don't hit the mark? Or we just need to get you present in the moment. Like get ready to run, imagine the run, visualize the run, see yourself jumping. And she's like overwhelmed to have to stay present. It was a torture for her to have to be present. It was awful, And she said to me after I helped her, she ended up jumping like 2 inches higher. She went to the Olympic trials. It was kind of this wonderful success story. But I said to her, what was that like? And she said it was the hardest thing anyone in my life has ever asked me to do. You asked me to stay present to what I was feeling. And I was basically coming out of my body because I couldn't stand how I was feeling. I had to depend on my body jumping or not jumping. My mind was not there. You asked me to bring my awareness back, it was torture. And that's where I realized I need to give athletes something that no one else yet is giving them. And this is this idea of self-compassion. Helping people bring, I don't say sport appropriate, but I don't have time to go too soft here, just to be honest. Give people a chance or encourage them to give them some kind of some kind of kindness, gentleness, something will soothe them enough that they have the courage to keep trying. Because that feeling of like embarrassment comes over, you just want to like shut down. But imagine, what can someone bring to mind in that moment that would be soothing enough, like, my coach believes in me, or this is what my life wants to be. What can be soothing enough to hold them to stay engaged? And I have intervention, that's my new book's coming out on this whole idea. But this is an idea, maybe in my positive psych class, where students are just kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, we know about what it means to be kind to other people. We're taught all, be kind, be kind. And you're saying your brother, what's good about your brother? Kind, like kindness. Kind, good person. But the thing is, can people turn that kindness back to themselves? And in moments when you most need it, and athletes, when the coach is like, you come on, like, that's a disaster, and that's awful, and then, the coach talks about and in that moment, like, what do you do with that? And the self-compassion idea is like planning in advance, what do I most need to hear in those difficult moments so I can keep going? You think self-compassion is like, being kind to yourself is like indulgent. It's actually a radical act of selflessness, because you don't depend on anybody else to soothe you. You don't depend on anyone else to do it for you. You learn how to give it to yourself. So for the athlete, when they're behind, they lose a race, and what do they do? They feel like, no, you're a pitcher. Catcher. Third baseman.
Hockey.
Oh, you're hockey. You're sleeping. Oh.
My main sport is hockey. I'm a goalie.
Oh, goalie. Okay. So here it is, goalie. The puck goes in. Everyone's like, oh! And you're like, oh! For the goalie, like, what can he say to himself in that moment? So, I've worked with many goalies before, and this one happened to goalies. They miss, they feel badly, then they kind of like shut down, they get overwhelmed, they're thinking how all those mistakes, and another one goes in, because they're lost in what already happened, instead of like, what do I need to hear so I can stay in the game? What do you think a hockey player, what do you think a goalie would need to hear, most need to hear? Now, these are the kind of things I've heard people say, like, I had a fencer who was on 15, she said, she brought to mind her coach saying, you got it, girl! If you can't think what you wish for yourself, is there someone else in your life that you would just want to hear their words? What would those words be? And can you bring those words to mind when you most need them? And I'll leave the last one, this is the last example, is a musician. And I was getting ready for a big performance, and I was trying to think, what in the world? He couldn't think of anything to say to himself. Like, what could he say? What could he say? Like, what do you need to say? Your mother still loves you, And the mom laughs, and he's like, no, you don't understand. That's it. My mother still loves me, And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That was the piece of self-compassion for him. So, thanks for coming. It's a beautiful Cape Cod night. You'd be anywhere. There's so many places to be. So I really appreciate you coming and listening. I hope that you take, something.
Well, I saw a clip on Alex Honnold, the guy who reclined, like, if he didn't have any of these things, he would have died. You know, he didn't have really a lot of self-confidence
This is interesting, yeah. Okay,
and, yeah.
thank you. I can't talk about that right now. Okay, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Something to keep you there. Anyone else? An idea that resonated with you?
I think the self-compassion and the few things that you can think of in a day. Sometimes when I have a big to-do list and I haven't been able to cross very many things off, if I turn around and think about how many things I did do, and they might have been things that interrupted me so I couldn't do the other things, but if I write down or think about, oh, but I did do this and this and this,
What you did.
it helps me a lot to know that maybe it wasn't the to-do list, but some things did get done, and some of them are things I might not have even counted on or thought, so.
Yeah, great. Thank you. One more, yes.
Yeah, I like to watch tennis, so it's always interesting, you know, obviously someone's gonna lose, but, you know, you take a big match and it's like, whoever lost, they worked so hard to get to where they were. And it's always interesting when some people just really fall apart and wonder, you know, their experience, what goes on.
Yeah, that's what's going on. One last one, yeah.
I'm just gonna say, I'm a high school field hockey coach.
Oh, great.
And one of the things I've been coaching, this will be my 20th year coaching, and one of the things that I noticed with my girls most recently is that they're very fragile.
Yes.
They really,
yes.
can't, they're, you know, people say they're soft, but they really are. Like, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean that it just that's what I'm noticing. And I started last year with them. I had them read, you know, a book about with little quotes, and I'm trying to, you know, we've been trying to do a lot of mental help with them because they can't. You can't talk to, you know, they need, you know, we're trying sandwiching, you know, positives and negatives, and, you know, in between a positive sandwich, right? Because they need to hear, and I'm trying to figure, this is really great, you know, some things to try to get them to see the positives besides just
themselves,
Yeah.
And that would be my last thought on that is that, you know, the kids, what they're expected to do now in terms of hours and time and travel and skill is nothing that was expected 10, 20, 30 years ago.
And academics.
Ramping up. What's that?
And academics.
Academics, maybe even worse.
Even,
So thank you very much for showing.